Well, let's talk about the Road Warriors here. They're going to agree to return for the option year of their contract. So they're actually going to be sticking around with the NWA and WCW until December 9th, 1990. Meltzer would say that should end any rumors of them going anywhere else. And from what he's been told, the terms were the same as last year: $2,000 per match for each Road Warrior and $1,100 for Paul Ellering for each match, 250 dates per year, which means they trail probably only Flair and Hogan as the highest paid wrestlers in North America. Of course, there had been talk that the Road Warriors were not going to renew, but now they are. But let's just talk about the finances involved with that.
Mhm.
That means before your travel, you're $5,100 in every single Road Warriors match.
Yeah.
This is at a time where WCW is not necessarily setting the woods on fire from a live event perspective. Were you an advocate of keeping the Warriors around and at that rate?
I'm not so sure about that rate. I probably would have suggested, and it's going to sound like a dick, probably a little bit less. Uh, and I don't know if I would have used all 250 dates because the Road Warriors were attractions.
Right.
They weren't Arn and Tully. They weren't the Midnight Express. They weren't the Rock and Roll Express. They weren't a team that you could see over and over and enjoy it because they changed their matchup. They would do things differently. Road Warriors had a routine that they were comfortable doing. The finish, going into the finish, their obligatory high spots that they always did. They got a pop. Uh, but I think we overexposed them.
Yeah.
They we allowed their specialness to evaporate to, to some degree. I drink this fucking coffee and I get the hiccups. That's terrible for an orator.
Fans were just too familiar with them. They saw them too often. It felt less
Yeah,
special.
yeah, and they didn't have a variety of things that they did in their act, so to speak. They told the same jokes every week, using that analogy.
Right.
Uh, so I look at the Road Warriors as attractions. Now then, were they big attractions? Hell yeah, and they would have been bigger in WCW if they had not been so overexposed. And then because when you do that, you have these longer matches, and you're in a program. You got to sell. Part of the functionality of this process of pro wrestling is if you don't learn how to sell and the various levels of selling, and you're going to be a one trick pony. And one trick ponies don't last long term. So they had some teams they sold better than others, uh, like the Steiners, Doom, and they sold for the Samoans. So I guess I'm defeating my point, but I'll just put it this way: they didn't like to sell,
Right.
and they perceived selling. Somebody convinced them over time that selling was a show of weakness, and it's not.
Well, that's silly.
It's a show of strength and your ability to perform. And so, anyway, but I'm glad we kept them. We needed the name identity. We needed the star power. But I think again, we got 250 dates. Well, just don't throw them away. Don't just use them for the sake that you got them on the books for 250 dates. Whoever said that was a good deal in the first place? Don't want to overexpose an attraction like those two cats.
Let's talk about some other folks who were maybe going to learn about selling. This is directly from the Observer. Kevin Sullivan destroyed jobber Alex Porto so badly that the match will probably never air on TV. Porto bled like crazy, not the hard way, the hardest way, and wound up being taken out in an ambulance. This is a story I don't remember ever hearing about.
I,
We've seen some pretty brutal, quote unquote, squash matches where Kevin perhaps would be a little rough with some of the younger talent, but man, the guy left in a hospital, and it's a guy we would see later in the WWF, Alex Porto. Do you remember hearing about this story?
vaguely, vaguely, when I was reading our notes last night, or late last night, I saw this, and for the life of me, didn't remember it. Now, maybe if I saw a video, I would say, oh yeah, I remember that, but I don't. But Sully was known for being a little tough, and I'd rather err on that side, is the side of where your punches wouldn't break an egg. And but Sully was a physical guy, and I think that was part of that was his fact that he was way under 6 feet tall, and he walked. He had a chip on his shoulder because he made himself a tough guy, and he seemed like he had the desire to prove that every night that he's a tough guy.
There's a clip of this on YouTube that we'll link on our social, but boy, it's something to see.
Sully became a good friend over the years. I respect his knowledge, and I respect his dedication to pro wrestling after all these years, because he's been in it a long time too. You know, I'll be 50 in the business, 50 years, January 1. That's not that long off.
No, I'll be here before you know it. And so will our conversation about Starrcade 89. Of course, this is going to be a round robin tournament for both singles wrestlers and tag wrestlers. In the singles affair, we've got Ric Flair, who's the NWA champion, sporting the big gold belt, along with Sting, the Great Muta, and Lex Luger. So that's loaded. And then over on the tag side, also loaded, Doom, the Steiner Brothers, the Road Warriors, and the Skyscrapers. Now, I say the Skyscrapers because that was the original plan. And we know it's going to wind up being the Samoan SWAT team. But at some point, Sid gets hurt with a broken rib that winds up turning into a punctured lung. So he's got a pretty major injury here. Not a softball circumstance, but a real deal injury. He's never going to be pulled from any of the advertising because, as you know, that stuff goes out way ahead of time a lot of times. And maybe we were going to make it a game time decision. This probably would have looked and felt like a different tournament, you know, had Sid been up to snuff. But this is an interesting idea. You know, once upon a time, the Starrcade concept was considered the granddaddy of them all. Of course, it was a Thanksgiving tradition. In '87, Vince McMahon sets out to change that. He creates the Survivor Series. So starting in '88, the show starts happening in December. That was True Grit that year, right at the very beginning, I guess, of the WCW era without Jim Crockett Promotions. And now a year later, we come up with this idea of a round robin tournament. And I think on last week's show, you sort of gave us a tease. Was this your idea, the round robin tournament for Starrcade?
Mr. Hurd came to me and said, we need to do something, you know, special at Starrcade and try to, you know, we need more sizzle. We need something different. We need something new. So I started thinking in a booking type sense, and I came up with the round robin tournament. I'm looking at it naively because I'm thinking, hey, it's pro wrestling. Somebody's got to lose. Somebody's going to win. How big a deal is that going to be for the ones that you asked to put somebody over? I didn't think that through enough, but it was an issue. And but I love the concept. The artwork and the graphics look great. There was a lot of star power in the picture. You're going to see all the top guys wrestle all the top guys. But again, somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. So, and because that idea got approved, because nobody else had a better one, because I wouldn't want to die on that hill. If there were other ideas that seemed to be marketable and fulfill the requirements outlined by Mr. Hurd, then I'd have been fine with that. I wasn't one of those guys where I'm going to boo-boo face because my idea didn't get accepted. So, but that's not how it went down. Nobody had anything better, and they all went along with it. I think, I don't know. It was, I wish I'd have thought it through a little bit more. I still like the idea. I like tournaments. Everything starts and ends in one night. There's a natural progression, and it's pretty cool. I think I like tournaments. That's why they make so much money for March Madness, think about that. That's a tournament. And it's got charm and uniqueness and unpredictability. And that's what we were shooting for this, for Starrcade in '89.